We've also created what we call the Fight Terror Fund, the FTF, or F Trump Fund.
Welcome back to Moose on Loose. Today we got Doug Ford going to America. We've also got David Eby and other premiers going to America, but Doug Ford threatens that he can turn off America's power. That's right, the electricity to millions of Americans. We got Chrystia Freeland coming out with a new tax plan, which is basically just ripping off Pierre Poilievre's tax plan. New polling data, a whole bunch of other stories. Let's jump into this. First off, we got polling data coming from Shreya Teest here. This one's going to sting a bit. I should note before we look at the data, someone asked him how credible is Ledger. As he said, one of the most credible pollsters in Canada. So what we're looking at here is 37% for the Conservatives, 37% for the Liberals. Yeah, that's okay. So Mark Carney's getting his big bump here. Now, while this doesn't look great, let's take a look back at memory lane. This is the Conservatives' numbers back in 1992. The red here being the Liberals. So this is Jean Chrétien's polling numbers. We got Brian Mulroney down here. Kim Campbell takes over right here. Her numbers surge. People figured out who she was. They didn't like the things she was saying. She said some stupid things, and off the cliff it went. So the same thing we saw, as I've shown a couple times with Kamala Harris. She got that initial spike, and as you can see here, it's 1 or 2 months after joining a race, being involved in politics in any serious manner, dives off a cliff. So the new shiny syndrome here, we're seeing this back in 1992. We see it with Kamala Harris. I thought this one was interesting, posted by a contrarian here. He's basically asking, why is it flipped, the boomers in Canada versus the boomers in America? And as you see here, this is for America. Keep in mind the colors are flipped in America, so the red are the Republicans or the Conservative Party and the blue are the Democrats. There are more right-leaning, right-wing people in America that are older, but in Canada it's the other way. Now we have the corrupt media like CBC who pushes propaganda, so I think that is probably the majority of the reason, I would suspect. Got this one from Danielle Smith, so she's coming out. She urges the federal government to repeal Bill C-5 and reintroduce mandatory minimums for street candy offenses. Recently, we've got Pierre Poilievre coming out with his Canada First message, and the Liberals right away attacking it with this. This is so sad. One Proud Boys chapter based in Hamilton is now using the name Canada First and shares blatant pro-Yahtzee type of words, material on Telegram, according to Peter Smith, a reporter and researcher with the Canadian Anti-H-Word Network. So because one person or one group did one thing somewhere, you can't make this stuff up. So Canada First is now a bad thing to say in Canada, according to the Liberal Party. Come on. There's no low that these people won't stoop to. Meanwhile, we got Mark Carney here. We got Pierre Poilievre calling him out here. This photo is going around here of Mark Carney because he used to be a goalie like 40 or 50 years ago. You look at the shoes he's wearing down here. Apparently, they're $2,030 black leather triple stitched Veta sneakers. That's right, Mark Carney wears $2,000 sneakers. If that says anything about his net worth, I really wonder what his net worth is. It's got to be like hundreds of millions, if not more than that. Next up, we got Doug Ford here, threatening to turn off the lights to millions of Americans.
I want to further integrate our energy and electricity grids. People don't realize, as we stand right here, right now, we can deliver from Ontario electricity as far south as Florida. In just a moment's notice, we can flick on the switch or flick off the switch. I prefer flicking on all the switches. And
What was he about to say? There's another SH word.
Urge more exports of Canadian energy and electricity to the U.S. to power your economic growth.
Yeah, Doug, not a good take, man. Just threatening to turn off the lights, turn off the power when it's minus 20, 30 outside. You're going to get Trump rolling in with the military. Like, let's just call it as it is. You can't threaten them with this because you'll get decimated. Some people saying Trump would flick off the auto industry in Ontario. A lot of people, a lot of Canadians not liking this take here from Doug. Not a good thing to threaten people with. Why is that? How to negotiate, step back and respond like a respectable neighbor? Why lower ourselves to the present USA standards? There's definitely a lot of ill feelings here between Canada and America because of everything that's going on. We also got Doug coming out and saying, though, that Trump is one of the best at negotiating.
You know, let's all face it. There's no secret. President Trump is probably one of the best negotiators in the world. This is his area of expertise. But we need to sit down. And it's not always just the president. He has great advisors. He has very important key allies that sit in the Senate and sit in the Congress that he needs their support. So we're going to continue communicating our message about the AMCAN Fortress.
I don't think Trump cares about AMCAN Fortress. We need an election. So Doug is PM of Canada now? Yeah, we don't have a PM of Canada. And here's the guy who's supposed to be running the country, gallivanting around the AI summit. This is only a 10-second clip. Basically, they ask him if he's talked to JD Vance, who's the vice president of America, who's attending this summit.
As usual, these summits are a great opportunity to speak with a range of leaders, and we had lots of conversations last night.
Yeah, he's not answering that. He didn't talk to JD Vance, even though he was like right next to the guy. Justin Trudeau is a cowardly loser. This guy's the epitome of what a weak man looks like. Not just in Canada, in the world. You can't get a more weak man than this. You can see here, he was right next to JD Vance. Probably didn't talk to the guy though, because he's scared of him. And check out this clip of Emmanuel Macron intentionally not shaking Modi's hand. His plays come from the same book that Justin Trudeau uses.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Thank you. Long time. It's good to be here.
Look right here.
Thank you.
So Modi's sitting down. He totally just snubbed him there. He reaches behind Modi to shake a hand.
Thank you again. Very excited.
This is a very interesting exchange. So you can see here, he reaches past Modi, and Modi feels totally like basically insulted here. And look what happens afterwards. So JD Vance here notices what's happening here. And what does he do? He steps in to make a relationship here to smooth this over and make Modi feel like he's not invisible. Look, he taps him on the shoulder right here.
Thank you again.
He says something to him there. See, and they're having a laugh. JD Vance, a smart man. He knows how to build relationships. You also notice too, going back, this lady, she reaches over. She's cut off. This lady right here. She reaches over to shake Modi's hand too. There's some smart world leaders here, but Emmanuel Macron, Justin Trudeau are not those. They're the weakest losers in this bunch. On the flip side, we got Pierre Poilievre here, as it says, delivering a sucker punch to the WF and the UN. He's asked directly if he would go along with their agenda, if he would fund them, all that kind of stuff.
I'm against any of these agendas. I'm never going to do what the UN tells me to do. I'm banning my members from being involved in the World Economic Forum. We're going to put people, we're going to get rid of the mandates, banning central bank digital currency, no mandatory digital ID. The which?
ESG and DEI.
It's all garbage.
It's all companies don't get funding
It's
now.
all garbage.
It is garbage.
All that stuff is it's a fake industry designed to make interest groups like corporate executives and insiders filthy rich, and they don't care about any of the causes that they talk about. They don't care about those causes. They're a bunch of hypocrites and phonies. Okay, so I'm not going to buy into that garbage. I'm going to get back to good free enterprise economics where businesses get ahead by having the best product, not by having the best lobbyists. Workers keep more of their wages. Government gets out of people's hair, off their back, and out of their way.
Let's go, Pierre. That's what we need. Get rid of this DI nonsense. As Pierre mentioned about the central bank digital currency and digital ID, that's what Mark Carney wants. He loves that stuff. This is the guy who just went to China last year to meet with Xi Jinping. China has all of that stuff. They do surveillance on their own population. They have cameras that scan your faces as you're walking across street corners. If you jaywalk, they'll deduct a social credit score. They control people's lives. That's what Mark Carney wants for Canada. He wants to control everyone and everything. If you do something wrong, that he just flicks a switch, cuts off your bank account. We know how that goes. We know what these losers are all about. Speaking of loser, we got Frank Baylis. This coming from Blacklock's reporter. It says taxpayers owe Gazans new housing, says Liberal leadership's Frank Baylis laments Canadians failed in our role by not accepting more than 5,000 refugees with tax-free grants. And further, it says Frank Baylis says Canada is committing a form of discrimination by not accepting more Palestinian refugees, and that taxpayers should cover the cost of rebuilding homes in Gaza to make up for it. Are you kidding me? This guy wants us to build Gazan homes? Get out of our country. This is not a Canadian. This is disgraceful. These people already come to our country and are getting a $5,000 handout and then get paid $82,000 a year while Canadians break their backs working. What is this? These people are just deranged and corrupt. Look down here. Frank Baylis just lost whatever little support he had with his asinine, irresponsible, and completely out of touch with Canadian statement. Exactly. Frank Baylis, this is nail in the coffin. He's done. Yeah, goodbye. The migrants can go stay in his house and see how he feels then. Now this one from Table Salt says the only real estate selling out in Canada. We got this here. It says shipping container village in Quebec. First 40 containers became occupied almost right away. 60 more units are anticipated. Yet we're sending $16 billion in foreign aid across the world. Of that $16 billion, I believe it's around $8 billion went to health-related things around the world. Think about $8 billion going into our healthcare system, but instead it's being flushed around the world in these dirty money laundering schemes. Next up, we got this one here. Chrystia Freeland plans tax cuts for middle class, eliminating the GST on new homes for young Canadians. I wonder where this idea came from. So obviously Pierre has already announced GST cut on new home builds. For her though, it's only for young Canadians. So it says here she is promising to cut the current tax rate from 20.5% to 19%. Chrystia Freeland promising tax cuts is like going to Tim Hortons and expecting to actually get the order that you ordered. She says here an annual savings $550 for people whose taxable income is between $57,000 and $114,000. Just think, if they cut the carbon tax, the average person would get like 5 to 10 times more back than that. Freeland's GST relief would apply to homes worth up to $1.5 million and could save young Canadians as much as $75,000. So ripping off Pierre's plan after she's already helped destroy Canada. Thanks, but no thanks. And let's just talk about Freeland for a second here. She's completely destroyed her Liberal leadership run. I have no idea what she was doing with this, but she's just tanking further and further every day. Initially, when she ripped Trudeau and came out with her big announcement there in December, when she was supposed to deliver the fall economic statement, that's when she was at her highest level, and all the Liberals were supporting her because someone stood up to Justin Trudeau. So as soon as Trudeau stepped down and intended to resign, about 2 or 3 weeks later, she should have come out the next day and said, I'm running for Liberal leadership. I'm going to take this forward. Trudeau wasn't doing it right. I'm going to do it right. She should have come out and capitalized, but instead she let Carney come out and fill the void there. Then she came out after Carney. Karina Gould came out the same day. She waited too long and didn't look like a leader. The person who comes out first looks like they're chomping at the bit and they have the leadership. They have the angst to go do it. So I don't know what her strategy is here, but it's clearly failed. Next up, we got Justin Trudeau's half-brother saying some really interesting things here. As Glenda M says here, I'm 100% sure Justin Trudeau's brother is speaking to him in this video, and 110% sure it applies to Mark Carney as well. What is Justin Trudeau's brother trying to tell us?
Anybody who's been blackmailed out there, or went to a white party, for example, and took a sip of a drink and got a little bit crazy, and then you're a little bit disconnected from reality, and all of a sudden you find yourself participating in some sort of sick ritual, and guess what? You find out later that, that was all recorded, and now you need to do what we tell you to do.
Yeah, is he talking about the WF or something? What is this?
You're a victim. You're trapped. You may have consciously made that decision. Release yourself from them. First, apologize to yourself, forgive yourself.
Is he talking about some sort of event that happened on an island? Maybe Mark Carney was photographed with people that were involved on this island. Is that what he's talking about?
And set up and offered deals. And some of you consciously took it because it was the cool thing to do, or you could see, the riches, the wealth, the power, actively contributing to a parasitic energy that is rotting and hindering growth of planet Earth.
Well, that is a very interesting video. He knows something he doesn't want to say. So we got a clip here of premiers going to America to try to sway things with the aluminum tariffs.
It's Mr. Eby goes to Washington on the anti-tariff campaign.
None of it makes sense to me, and I'll be trying to take that message to the Americans in Washington, D.C.
BC's premier heading to the U.S. Capitol, joining premiers from across the country in what's called the Council of the Federation.
We're meeting with decision makers in government, both Republicans and Democrats, elected officials, as well as business leadership.
But no meetings set so far with anyone from the Trump administration.
And I can assure you
they won't even take his call. Like, come on.
That we do have meetings set up with a number of senior decision makers in government, but those closest to the president will be confirmed at the last minute if we do get those meetings.
Eby addressing Trump's latest announcement on 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, potentially impacting hundreds of workers at the Rio Tinto aluminum smelting facility in Kitimat, saying American industry will suffer.
For the Americans, we know that they can only produce about 1.5 million tons of aluminum. And their demand for aluminum is more than 5 million tons a year. So that additional aluminum has to come from somewhere else.
Part of Eby's trip includes a media blitz with both U.S. and Canadian outlets, emphasizing everyday costs for Americans will go up.
Whether it's fuel or electricity or homes or pasta are going to be going up because of these tariffs.
While tariffs are top of mind for Canadian leaders, President Trump is making multiple headlines daily for all kinds of quotes and executive orders. A big question, can the premiers even get Trump's attention, let alone change his mind? Eby is set to return on Thursday.
David Eby isn't going to get anything done there. After his little stunt there saying he's going to pull the stumbling juice off the shelves, only for red states, how can they take the guy serious? David Eby's going to Washington to pander, and for nothing to come of it. None of it makes sense to me, and I'll be taking that message to the Americans. Fantastic strategy, David. Let me know you have no idea what is going on, then reiterate statistics. None of Eby's commie policies make sense to me either. Why doesn't he clean the province of the street fennel instead? Because he's probably in on it. That's why. All these guys are in on it. Otherwise, they would do the opposite of what they're doing. Next up, we got this one. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, the QP, calls on the federal government to seize the property and nationalize of any business which threatens to move nationally important operations to the U.S. I'm sorry, what? What is going on here? Seize businesses? Is Canada communist China now? Well, getting close. Leave it to the union to call for unlawful acts and force their opinions on those beyond their purview. Go ahead and try to stop Trump. How's that worked for others so far? Next up, we got Melanie Joly here saying that Ukraine will decide what victory looks like and they should eventually join NATO.
Ukrainians will decide what victory looks like. But I think there's a fundamental principle that is really important, which has been highlighted, which is Putin cannot just leave, rearm, and reinvade. This would be bad for Ukraine. This would be bad for all of us. And so we need to make sure that there is future security for Ukrainians. I think that what Canada came up with was a concept of, well, we think that eventually Ukraine should be part of NATO when conditions allow. We need to make sure that there are bilateral security agreements that are signed between Ukraine and many countries.
It's almost like she's saying everything possible to try to provoke Russia even more. Trudeau's doing this with Trump, same with Carney. The Liberals have this agenda just to try to stir up as much frustration and agitation around the world as possible. They will go down as the worst government in Canadian history. Every time she speaks, we all get dumber. Just wow. Who is this dolt? Dumb as a bag of rocks. He's such a puppet of the WF. Check out this here. So Elon Musk changed his name on X briefly, and then the news picked it up.
Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge.
They're getting trolled so bad, they don't even realize it. Meanwhile, in Toronto, we have Muslims blocking the streets. As Mark says here, you wonder why traffic is so bad in Toronto. Look how many officers, like how much money is being spent here because these people are praying in the streets. Crazy. Like seriously, there's more officers than the people praying. One for one, every single cop just go over here and arrest them. One each. You can't block major infrastructure, especially since probably a lot of these people just got a $5,000 paycheck from the Canadian government after arriving here in Canada just weeks ago. Now they'll get paid $82,000 a year and then they block our streets? Arrest them. What is this crap? You don't know the rules of Canada, don't come here. Why is there such a huge police presence? Are taxpayers okay with paying for this extra policing? Listen to this utter stupidity coming from Bonnie Crombie here, a provincial Liberal.
We've also created what we call the Fight Terror Fund, the FTF, or, F Trump Fund, too. However you want to take it. We would ensure that businesses had access to capital, which would stimulate more investment in our province.
Are you kidding me? She creates the F Trump Fund? Is this mandate coming down from the federal liberals to try to piss off Trump as much as possible? Liberals have lost touch with reality. Like, this is disgraceful. The guy's threatening tariffs and this is what you come out with? Meanwhile, we've got King Abdullah II of Jordan who arrives at the White House to have talks with President Trump.
Ready two, ready doors, ready to hop, ready to open. Ready to close, ready to shut, ready to face.
So Trump's not messing around here. He's looking for someone, whether it's Egypt or Jordan, to take all the Palestinians, all the Hamas supporters, and take over Gaza. And that's what we're seeing here.
How is the U.S. going to own Gaza? Your White House has made clear taxpayer dollars won't be used for this. So what money are you going to use to buy Gaza?
We're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it, and we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace, and there's not going to be any problem, and nobody's going to question it. And we're going to run it very properly, and eventually we'll have economic development at a very large scale, maybe the largest scale on that site. And we'll have lots of good things built there, including hotels and office buildings and housing and other things. And we'll make that site into what it should be. And the people from Gaza who wouldn't be able to be there for years, because you're talking about just to get it and prepare it and to take care of all of the problems that currently it has, as you know, tunnels, and people are in those tunnels. And you have some good people and some bad people, and you may have hostages right now. You know, you have the hostages possibly there. They don't know where they are. And, you know, I have a Saturday deadline, and I don't think they're going to make the deadline personally. I think they want to play tough guy, but we'll see how tough they are.
The deadline is Trump said he would unleash hell on earth if they don't release the hostages by Saturday at midnight.
They are. But it's going to be a wonderful thing. It's going to be wonderful for the Middle East. I think it'll turn the Middle East. I think you're going to have peace in the Middle East. You're going to eventually have peace in the Middle East.
So wild times we're living in here. And finally, check out this update to the border in America.
Steve, I'd like you to say a couple of words about it.
Yes, well, as you know, Mr. President, since you issued your day one executive orders, border crossings are down approximately 95%. You talk to agents on the line, in their entire careers, they've never seen crossing days as low as what they're experiencing right now. The cartels, in fact, are enormously frustrated because they've never seen a clampdown like this before in American history. There are people who were working at Border Patrol back when it was INS in the 80s and 90s. They've never seen a day like this. That's because you've mobilized the 10th Mounted Division, the Marines, the entire U.S. military. They're erecting physical miles of barrier, temporary and ultimately permanent, every single day. You have all of your border agents pushed to the front line. They're not doing the humanitarian processing, quote unquote, that Biden was doing. They're doing law enforcement and national security. They're interdicting weapons and drugs. They're interdicting violent, high threat criminals. And the U.S. military is repatriating illegal immigrants at a pace and a scale that has never occurred before in American history. And those who are committing human trafficking and child trafficking are being prosecuted for felony offenses, and they'll be doing hard time in jail. There's never been a lockdown like what you have implemented through your orders and vision since you took the oath of office.
Wow. So, I mean, I bring up these clips because we need a crackdown in our country, and it's interesting to see how radical this has changed in just a few weeks. Make America safe again. So the situation in Canada with the money laundering and the street fentanyl, all that is off the charts, and it's much worse than we realize. And I'm alluding here to an upcoming episode, but Donald Trump and the Americans know about this, that what is going on in Canada and how bad it is. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Trump keeps talking about annexing Canada. I think Donald Trump is really just using that as a negotiating tool, not just for the liberals in Canada, but around the world. As we are the closest neighbor and closest ally to America, it does set a standard with the rest of the world. So it's probably using that as leverage. We're just a couple days out before the court challenge coming from the prorogation, so we'll see what happens with that. There's a ton of big news coming down the pipe, so stay tuned.